So in this video, we're actually going to be talking about when the best time is to pursue your MBA program. Now, the answer to this is actually going to depend on two very important factors, and it's going to differ from person to person. The two factors are what type of MBA program are you looking at, and what's the structure of that program as well. And so, for example, somebody who's looking at a co-op MBA, which is something that's very popular in Canada, not so much in the US. There are a few programs that I've come across, but there might be some programs that'll have the work experience built into the actual MBA, which is great because if you're not necessarily sure of what you want to specialize in, or if you want to at least try it out before you actually pursue it as a full-time option, you have the ability to use some of your work terms to actually apply a lot of the knowledge that you've been learning in the classroom to see whether or not it's something that you feel like you want to devote your life to. A program like this would probably attract people very early in their career, either right out of undergrad or probably 1 to 2 years of experience, because of the fact it's going to be longer in nature because there's going to be the work terms integrated in there. The type of student looking at this is going to be completely different to somebody who's maybe looking at a part-time MBA, who might have quite a bit of experience, have a lot of other obligations that they need to tend to as well, and are looking at the part-time option because of the fact that they don't necessarily want to switch careers, or maybe they just need that additional knowledge, or that additional academic experience to essentially propel them in the career that they're already in. And this is going to be completely different from somebody who's looking at an executive MBA, who is later in the career. It's almost the opposite end of the spectrum from a co-op MBA. And so not all MBAs are created equal. It's really going to depend on the specific program and the structure that you're looking for. And so another example of this is somebody who's looking at a dual degree program. So somebody who's looking at a JD MBA program um, might not need as much work experience because of the fact that the assumption is that they're going to be doing articling at the end of the program, then sitting for the bar. And so the work experience component isn't necessarily as important. But again, this really does depend on which school you're looking at, because I have seen some schools require the work experience before somebody even considers the dual degree option. However, this is not always the case either. Now, the purpose of this video is probably going to focus mainly on the full-time option, which I think is going to be applicable to the most amount of people. The full-time option in the United States typically recommends 2+ years of experience. Now, there are certain schools that I've seen require more than that, 4 or 5 years of experience. This differs from Europe, who I've seen typically tends to attract people who are later in their careers, 5, 6, 7, 8 years of experience. But in the United States, I typically see, if we can make a generalization, of course, always check the individual school's websites, call them, and make sure you find out. Typically, we're going to make the assumption that it's at least 2 years plus of experience. Now, the 2 years of experience is actually going to be very, very critical. One of the biggest things is that, and this often goes really like it goes overlooked, quite frankly, by a lot of people who are coming right out of their undergraduate degree. They don't consider this aspect of it at all. A lot of the times, students out of their undergrad will look at an MBA and say, what can I get out of this program? What can it do for me? They look at salary ranges, get very excited about that, but they don't at all consider, what can I bring to this program? What can I bring to the classroom? What can I bring to the classmates with me in that program? How can I make everybody else in the class better? And if you don't have the formal work experience, you're drawing upon academic experiences that, quite frankly, everybody else in the class probably has. Or in fact, they would have, and probably a lot of other people who have a similar major, and they really aren't taking as much out of the program as they would if you were to be able to bring some other tangible experiences with you as well. And so, for this reason, a lot of schools really do look heavily at the work experience component. Now, there are some schools who will make some exceptions for compelling candidates right out of their undergraduate program who can make a case for why the MBA is right for them right out of the undergraduate program. However, even if you fall into this category, I strongly urge you to at least take a few jobs before you pursue the MBA full time, to even see and to determine whether or not the MBA is going to provide you with the value that you're going to need given the area that you're looking to work in, or even given the company that you're looking to work in. A lot of the modern day tech companies don't necessarily look at credentials the way that traditional companies do as well. So you might actually find that if you're a computer engineer and you go into a specific field, that you might not even need an MBA to get to where you want to be. The other thing that people really should be doing is, like, they should be giving themselves the benefit of the doubt. Like, you might find that going into industry, um, you work really hard for 2 or 3 years, you might be able to get to a level of where you might not necessarily need the MBA anymore because you're already at that level where a lot of the people you're working with have their MBAs. And so you, to a certain degree, saved yourself a heck of a lot of money as well as the time pursuing it. And now you have the actual practical experience behind you. Perhaps at that point, you could look at a part-time MBA, or at least, try to get as far as you can in your career. Maybe look at an executive MBA program in a few years away from that as well. And so let's assume that you're in your career right now and you're kind of contemplating whether or not the MBA is right for you or whether or not this is the right time for you to actually pursue it. I've kind of narrowed down three main points as to why people would actually look at an MBA or leave their current position or leave their industry to pursue it. In some cases, even if it doesn't necessarily result in a financial gain at the end of the program. The first is actually if you feel like you've hit a brick wall and you've gone as far as you can with the current education that you have, and that any advancement opportunities is going to need some type of advanced training that might come in the form of an MBA program. And so you might need that to leverage the network that you're going to build there, the connections, the experiences that you're going to build in order for you to actually take that next leap. The other example are career switchers, which is very typical of somebody who's looking at an MBA program because it's something that will allow you to kind of rebrand yourself and repackage the skills that you already have in a way that might be able to make you a compelling candidate at some other company or some other role in another company as well. So getting the exposure to a bunch of different content that you might not have otherwise seen before will give you the relevant context that you need to potentially be an applicant in a completely different field. And so this is a very popular thing that you'll see amongst MBA programs. In fact, I think one of the most popular transitions are people coming from finance to consulting. They might have the very practical experience in finance. Maybe they had a background in finance or majored in economics or majored in engineering or something very specialized and don't necessarily have the full scope of academic exposure to a bunch of other types of fields within business. And so, in order to get that most effectively, they'll look to an MBA program and then branch out into consulting where they can actually have a more holistic approach to what they can offer the firm. The last example are just people who might just not be sure. And so what I mean by this is somebody who might be at their career, they're happy with where they are, they enjoy the job that they're currently in, but they're open to other opportunities as well. They're kind of just going with it. They got a job right out of undergrad, maybe they got a few promotions, and they're in a role where they're content with, but they're not necessarily excited by. And so the MBA might be able to provide them with an opportunity to um, gain exposure to a bunch of other things that might be able to bring them to a different field that they might not otherwise be able to get on their own. And so to bring this full circle, if you wanted to really narrow down when is the best time, of course, it does depend on the type of program and the structure of the program. One thing I will urge if you're going to take anything away from this video is I really encourage people to really pursue some level of full-time work experience after their undergraduate program. I know it's very compelling coming out of your undergraduate degree to just look at the employment reports and to really look through LinkedIn and to see people who are very successful early on in their career, but I really want people to really understand what they can actually contribute and add to the class and think about that before you actually look to apply to programs. Another thing you might want to consider is what specialized knowledge are you looking to get out of your MBA program? Like, are you looking for specific accounting courses to make up for a deficiency in your knowledge? Maybe specific marketing exposure, HR exposure. Maybe you find yourself in a management position and you need to draw upon a lot of HR policies and practices that you don't necessarily know already. Like, would it be more beneficial for you to get a specific credential instead, and maybe determine whether or not that could be a stepping stone to determine whether you actually want to pursue the full MBA program? Because there might be other options for you to not necessarily have to commit fully to the MBA, but to pursue specialized knowledge through individual courses, individual credentials as well, which will save you a lot of time and money as well. So in closing, I urge you to narrow down the types of schools that you're looking at, the types of programs within those schools that you're looking at, and actually look at their class profiles. The class profiles will typically tell you the age range as well as the work experience range for the most recent class. That'll give you a general understanding of where you fall within that scope. The other interesting thing is you might find that the ranges are actually going to be quite large. A lot of times they will break it down into what percentage of the class falls in each of the respective ranges. And so you'll be able to see how much of the class actually has 2+ years of experience versus how many have 5+ years of experience. And that's also something to really take into consideration in terms of setting your expectations for what types of jobs you might be eligible for coming out of the MBA program. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, make sure to leave it in the comment section below. And as always, we'll see you in the next one.